Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call together the March 9th, 2023 school committee meeting. Start by asking those that can to raise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, and justice for all. Thank you very much. This evening, we have a consent agenda posted, as well as minutes from our March 2nd, 2023 meeting and oath to bills and payroll. There a motion to accept?
There is.
Motion made by Mr. Austin.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Marius. Terrible. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'll mark that unanimous. Of note, we are expecting Beanel any minute and Jen Gold as well, but we figured we've got some things we can get to. This is 7:05 or thereabouts. We're running a little ahead of schedule, I suppose. This is our first opportunity for interested, before we start to run behind schedule, we'll be ahead. This is our first opportunity for interested citizens. There'll be a second opportunity at the end of the meeting. If we have anyone in the room that wishes to speak or anybody on Zoom.
Did you not have me online, but I believe you made me run?
Okay.
Possibly? No.
You know,
Okay.
no. Okay, great. This is our recognition portion of the meeting. Typically, we would hear from our student representative, although this was a meeting that was added to the school to our school committee calendar. Try to accomplish what's on tonight's agenda, but Superintendent Clenchy has a couple items to share.
Sure. Just a quick update. We had an incredible senior high girls basketball game this week. It was one of the best girls basketball games I've watched in a long time. They're off to Tingsboro this weekend, and I'd just like to wish them all the best. They played like they did Tuesday night. I think they're going to give this team a real run for their money. So, congratulations to the team and the coaches. It's hard to believe that Mike Lynn has just announced registration for the 2023 spring sports season. So, make sure you get that link, and if you're interested in playing sport, better to register early than later. Last meeting, we talked about the junior class silent auction at the high school, and I was stating that I was hoping I would win something, and I'm here to report to you tonight that I was a highest bidder on the Jabra earbuds, so I'm looking forward to using them. And I humbly have to admit that Miss Snow, with the gazillion ticket she put in, did win the Ed's Weenies gift certificate. So congratulations. And that's it. I think it's
Perfect. Thanks very much. So tonight's agenda is largely to discuss some topics that considered old business, but we do have one point of new business before us this evening, which is the Neshoba Valley Technical High School alternative representative interviews and appointments. This is a joint meeting between the school committee, the select board, and the town moderator. And I believe we have some folks in the room, and we have one candidate before us, Ed Mullen. So before we get started, do you guys want to call your meeting to order?
Yeah, I want to make sure our chair is not. I'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum.
Okay, select board has called a meeting to order with a quorum. And I want to recognize the moderator, Tim Goddard. Thank you for being here as well. We received an applicant, a letter of interest from Ed Mullen, so thank you very much. I believe the school committee was all copied, the select board was copied, moderator was copied. At this point in time, I'd like to invite the applicant, Ed Mullen, to the podium. Introduce yourself, please, name and address for the record. And if you'd just like to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, happy to.
Thank you.
Ed Mullen, 10 Grist Mill Road. Also happen to be the director of land use and buildings and the building commissioner for the town of Littleton. And Littleton Public Schools have served my 3 boys very well. I have a graduate. My middle son is in a sophomore over at Neshoba Valley. And my 8th grade son is applying to Neshoba Valley for next year's enrollment. When I saw this opportunity, I thought it was a great chance for me to get involved. So appreciate the opportunity. Little background on me: I was a contractor for 25 plus years, extensive background in building large commercial projects, some of the highlight projects that I could mention as far as construction goes, just to tie it into working or being involved with the technical high school is Farrell Farm stand in Concord. I constructed that in 2009 after their devastating fire. Also constructed all the build outs over in West Acton at the Wave project. You know, my guys might know the brewery True West or the Acton Coffee Shop or Twin Seafoods. That whole area was the project that I did as well. So the interesting part for me is I think that when I look at how I learned about municipal government was through the trades. And I think that's a missing component in the trade schools now, or even in public education, is that you learn about how federal government works. You might even learn a little bit how the state government works, but nobody knows how our town works when you're that age. So I really think it's an opportunity to maybe bring some of that to the Neshoba Valley, create some type of curriculum to help them tie the permitting process when you want to be a plumber or an electrician or a contractor, carpenter, what the steps are that tie to the government for public safety. So that's my big interest, as well as I know I'll be an alternate, so lots of conversations with Charlie Ellis and, you know, the involvement with subcommittees as the alternate. He says there's a lot of heavy lifting done at that level, so I look forward to it. I thank you for the opportunity.
Great. Thank you very much for your interest. I certainly view you as a well-qualified applicant. Any questions from the school committee or Anthony has his hand raised?
Yeah, hey, Justin,
Yes, Anthony.
so the town moderator is supposed to chair this part of the committee.
Thank you.
So I would say, Tim, to get up, we have remotely Mark Rambacher, so it'll require a roll call vote.
Perfect. Thanks for pointing that out. Tim? Sorry to have overstepped there. My apologies.
It's only required to moderate it. Hello.
The vote, just a vote. Okay.
You're good.
All right. Any questions among school committee members?
I just think we'd be lucky to have you representing us and working with the tech.
Select board? Questions, comments, concerns?
I'm not sure they're appropriate for. Aside, Mr. Robinson, I think I'd love to have Mr. Mullen. And I like his perspective on what he could bring to the Neshoba Valley Tech. I think Mr. Ellis has served us well in that same regard as a contractor, and I think that will, with his experience as not just a contractor, but also will be on the licensing side and on the regulatory side, will serve both our community as well as the students very well.
As a side note, in my letter of interest, I wrote that I'm also, for many years, have served on the chain gang with Chuck and Gary at the high school football games. And when my son tried out for Neshoba Valley, turns out that they didn't have anybody to run the chains over there either. So
Go figure.
at least I was trained by some professionals, so I knew what I was doing when I got over there. So,
Very good.
That's your number one quality, right?
yeah.
Excellent. All right, I think might be appropriate to call for a vote at this point in time.
All right, thank you. Just to review, there are two seats on the school committee, the regular seats held by Mr. Ellis. This would be for the remaining 2 years of a 3-year term for the alternate member, who only votes in case for the absence of the regular member. So this appointment would run through 2025, and then a 3-year term would be appointed. So we had one applicant for the position, and unfortunately, he's very well qualified. So I think we should take a nomination from the floor or from Zoom, if you will.
So moved.
All right. So
Second.
Is there a second? Are there any further nominations? Seeing none, we'll take a vote on the nomination of Mr. Mullen. And I think the select board will have to vote by roll call, since they have a remote participant. The school committee is present. They can vote. You may as well vote individually, though, I suppose, just to record the vote. I'll start things off. Moderator votes aye. And select board.
Aye.
Just
Roll call.
Yeah.
Ms. Napoli.
Aye.
Schcmte goes that.
Mr. Rambacher. Could you repeat that, Mark?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I'm an I as well.
Very good. School committee,
Joseph McCarthy votes aye.
Brett Austin votes aye.
Jen Gold votes aye.
Susan Harris, aye. Emo Patel, aye.
okay. Well, it's a unanimous vote. The nominating committee consists of 11 members. The select board, the school committee and moderators. So Mr. Mullin has been elected. And I would just ask if the superintendent could notify Superintendent Pigeon's office or send them a copy of the minutes of the meeting to let them know that this action has been taken. Thank you very much.
Just a matter, is it too late to request a paper ballot?
That's right. We're gonna go electronic.
Never mind.
No, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Perfect. All right, at this point in time, we'll move on. We've got 4 pieces of old business to potentially wrap up this evening. The first being a discussion regarding the potential removal of religious holidays from the school calendar. That had further discussion and anticipated vote. I guess I can kick things off. So as everyone's aware at this point in time, certainly everyone in the room and those that are viewing, the school committees made a conscious effort to look at the calendar, all aspects of the calendar, start time, start date, half days, use of half days, some things we can't potentially make any changes on because they're involved in the contract with the teachers union, other things we can, one of which was a look at their religious holidays. Historically, we had observed 2 with school closure. We added a 3rd holiday last year, Diwali. And as we're getting ready to look at approving a calendar for next year, sort of the conversation just became natural to be revisit this topic again. I continue to be of the opinion that I don't want to be in the business of picking and choosing which religious holidays we observe for school closure. I feel like the simplest, most equitable fashion, the easiest way to deal with this is just simply to celebrate federal holidays only. For school closure, I recognize that there is an inconvenience for those families that wish to observe the religious holidays. They likely would miss school. At one point in time, you know, maybe as much as 10 or 15% of our population might choose to miss school that day. Well, 90 or 85% of our population would be in school. And I feel like that creates some consistency with 5-day work weeks or school weeks. I think the constant stopping and starting of our school calendar presents problems for academic progress and consistency. Some of these holidays just happens to be where they fall towards the beginning of the year, where students and staff are trying to create some synergy and some academic stamina. And I personally don't want to get in the business of our population needs to meet a certain threshold to observe a holiday, because I feel like that's the exact opposite of inclusion. You know, that's probably exclusion by definition. Those are just my 2 cents. We've kind of talked about this in general. I would prefer to just kind of go around the room and everybody let us know where you stand, and we can make a vote or a motion if we want to entertain one. So
Mr. Chair, I just want to let you know that the select board has adjourned. We had a vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've record the select board has adjourned.
Thank you.
I see a hand up in the audience and I will be happy to recognize that, but just want to hear from the school committee members first. Brett?
Sure. We've heard from a lot of folks. We've heard from dozens of residents. We've heard from students individually and at the DEI club. And people have made really rational, kind of informed arguments that have given us all a lot to think about. They've made it on different sides of the issue, which is appropriate. This is an important issue. As I've been thinking through things, in my mind, I always think through how you frame it. Like, what's the way to do this? And in my mind, there are 3 framings that based on what the residents have said and my own thinking about this. And one is, if this is a church and state issue, which is kind of what you're talking about, is that a public institution shouldn't be in the business of choosing which religious holidays to celebrate that aren't federal, treat them all equally. And that's the argument that you just made. I'll just point out that we don't treat them all equally. I mean, we live in a society where our students have never had to worry about going to a soccer practice on December 24th. I mean, after soccer or basketball practice. They've never had to think about whether they should go in and take that AP exam on December 25th, and never had to worry about if they should travel to see grandma 2 hours away because they have to get back in school for December 26th. We treat Christmas differently. We do. It's not saying it's good, not saying bad, it's just we do. We have a whole week designed to protect it. So the church state kind of equity thing, that's a flawed argument in my mind, based because of how our calendar currently exists. Another argument is that, again, one you're making is that we really need to think about continuity of learning and protecting student parents for having to scramble. And it's a powerful argument. Like we heard from DEI Club last time, or members represents the DEI Club talking about made a good argument. Like, you got 6 months in advance, like you got the calendar, pick and find a babysitter. But there's considerable costs of that. At the high school level, maybe not. If you have children in the lower elementary grades, you're looking at 3 days, maybe multiple kids, maybe $80 a kid. It gets $600, $800. You can add up really quickly as a cost to families for that. The third way of framing it is that our calendars reflect our values. We've talked about this, right? Our budget should reflect our values. It'll be part of the conversation later. And if we're trying to educate people, not just to be academics, but to be citizens in a pluralistic world, I think that's a compelling argument to keep these. We've heard from students, we've heard from parents about how important it was to add Diwali to the calendar. We've heard from people about what it means to them to not have to choose between school and being a whole person as a religious person in their household. If we're trying to be a community that not only tolerates or accepts the differences among us, but actually welcomes them and celebrates, then that, in my mind, is an argument for keeping the holidays. And ultimately, just to get on the record, I'm most persuaded at this point by that argument.
Good. Jen?
I don't have anything prepared. That was excellent.
I'm a long commute. I have to think through.
I've given this a lot of thought and I still really struggle with it. I can see all the sides, and thank you for putting that so succinctly, Brad. I really struggle with it, and I fall on the side of keeping the federal holidays as they are. That is something that we are beholden to in terms of scheduling, and keeping the days that are the religious holidays, keeping school in session, but working really closely with the principals and the staff to make sure that provisions are made for those days, that important work is not given, homework is not given, exams are not given. Keeping those days as respectful days where we acknowledge that these are important days for a percentage of our population, but not giving everybody the day off where it's a very small percentage of town that's actually celebrating those days. That's where I fall on the decision. And it's mostly the separation of church and state argument, where I just feel like I don't want to be in the business of deciding when our population reaches a certain threshold of religion or percentage of that religion who actually celebrates or observes the holiday. It seems complicated. It seems inequitable. And I'd rather keep it clean, keep those days as regular school days, but again, with those provisions for respect, making sure, working again with the powers that be, that we really respect those days for the population who is going to take those days off. So that's how I feel.
Thank you. Dina?
Yeah, I also think this has been a very, very important topic, one that I've thought about a lot, and I've gone back and forth on a lot. And I think I expressed last time too, like I also was in the camp of it's difficult to be responsible or to set that threshold. And so is equity really just doing these three, or is it not doing them and, everybody in the same? And I thought about it a lot. And when we talk about separating church and state, that's assuming that the state is equitable and inclusive. And what Brad is pointing out is that it's not. And in this society, to not be actively anti-racist is to perpetuate the same inequities over and over. And so I think if this community and this district sees inclusion as a value, then we represent that. And having Diwali and not having another holiday is not necessarily inequitable. There's that is inclusion, when we have community members talking about the importance of celebrating this. And there's a term that I can't think of right now because I'm really tired, but the on-ramp that was created on the sidewalks for wheelchairs.
Curb cuts.
Yes, and so how, because those were created, they not only benefit that community, but mothers with strollers and skateboarders and right. And so we heard a lot from the community about, yes, I don't celebrate Diwali, but it actually benefits me to have that day off because I learned about it, because my peers are better off for it, because, and so inclusion benefits everybody, but not in the same way. And just because 10% of our community celebrates it doesn't mean that the other 90% don't benefit from it in another way. So I am definitely leaning towards keeping the observance of religious holidays, but I did want to ask about the committee's appetite for discussing them perhaps separately, because I wonder if Good Friday is not in the same boat as Yom Kippur and Diwali, given Christmas. So I just throw that out there.
Sure, we can, thank you for that, and we can deliberate that, or add that to the discussion after we hear from Stacy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything prepared either. I think you guys have all really mentioned a lot of the things that we've all been really struggling with, because it's such an important topic. And the thing that keeps kind of echoing in my mind is throughout all of the presentations that we've heard from the principals, you guys are always talking about inclusion and the message that you're trying to relay to the kids, that all the students are included. So I feel like to vote these holidays out of our calendar is almost going against that message. Where the kids are only learning, they're learning that these things are important in your classrooms, but they're not important enough to allow those kids to celebrate. And that just seems like it's like, it's just a direct conflict of that message there. When we originally proposed this, I was on board with just getting them off more for like of a logistical standpoint, just to clean up the calendar a little bit. But as we've talked more and we've heard so many things from our students, it seems to me that we're trying to solve kind of a logistical problem with people's kind of religious beliefs and their practices. And that just doesn't really sit right with me to do that. I think there are other ways for us to clean up the calendar, which we are going to discuss, but I'm not sure that holidays are kind of that first line of defense to clean up the schedule. So, I love that when my 7-year-old is teaching me about these holidays that I did not even know about. And that's really important for the kids in the school as they're growing up, to learn about them, respect them, and allow their peers to celebrate them as well, just like we do. We celebrate Christmas without the burden of having to choose. And I think regardless of any policies that we can put in, students still have to choose between their social and educational responsibilities versus their religious beliefs and practices, even if we do have those policies. And that's a really hard decision for anybody to make. And I certainly wouldn't want my daughter to have to make those choices when it came to our special holidays. So I'm erring on the side of keeping these. I agree with, just kind of taking them separately. Good Friday seems to be like something that maybe we could discuss a little bit more. But Diwali and Yom Kippur, right now I'm thinking that I think those students and staff deserve to have that time off.
Good. All right, we've gone around, we've heard from everybody. We've all kind of covered most of the points. We did have a hand raised in the audience, and I want to give that individual an opportunity to speak if they wish to speak. Just ask that you keep it to the 3-minute speaking time frame. Did I see a hand raised? Honestly, feel free to speak if you'd like to.
Okay, we just want to make like a quick final statement on like the presentation we had last week.
Sure.
So, sorry, just 1 second.
That's okay.
So.
I just want to double check that the audio is picking you up from your seat. If not, it might be best to go to the mic.
State your names and address.
Yeah.
The students, they don't do that.
Students don't do name and address.
They don't have, okay.
They're interested citizens, they need to.
Right.
Okay, so, Giselle Kernan, 225 Foster Street. Aria Watch Center, 4 Arbor Drive. Rachel Friedman, 1 Julian Road.
Okay. thank you. For future clarification, students do not need to give their name.
Sorry, that was my bad.
That's okay. I didn't want like a precedent to get set because, but thank you for offering that.
Mm.
And if you'd like to, like you said, you had a comment as a follow-up to your presentation from the previous week, please go right ahead.
Right, so we understand that culture throughout like many different places is influenced and is affected by religion. For example, traditions, relationships, family, and these are all like changed by someone's faith. And so here in Littleton, much of the population is children in schools and practices a religion. And other schools have all of these days off as well. So the issue of equity doesn't seem to affect the minorities in those areas with their school administrators having to pick and choose as well. So we just believed like deny your students or giving them sort of a conflict of interest of, oh, should I go to school and keep up with the work? Or should I stay home and practice this religion? Isn't exactly fair. And it takes a step back on sort of the promise of inclusivity in this community. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Steve, do you have that slide with the 31 towns?
You sent it to me?
Yep.
That's in my
I should forward it to.
I'll go find it.
Okay. We'll attempt to pull it up on the screen for public record, but I had gathered along the lines of what was just shared is that other towns make these decisions as well. And so it's amazing how quickly you can Google and find someone's school calendar. Like it doesn't take much time at all. So basically what I did was I went along 495 and out Route 2, 495 into 128. And I looked at 31 towns and how they treat Yom Kippur, Diwali, and Good Friday. And, the results are that 25% of these 31 towns observe Yom Kippur with a day off. 19% of them observe Diwali with a day off. 42% observe Good Friday with a day off. Only 16% of these towns represent a closure on all 3 days. It probably has something to do with demographics, probably has something to do with how progressive their school committees are or their community is. Some towns, as the previous speaker mentioned, have picked and chosen which days to be open. And those that are open for one, and Good Friday, I think that's just kind of like a long-standing tradition that probably they just haven't addressed. Westford stands out to me. They're closed on Yom Kippur and Diwali, and they're open on Good Friday. And I heard a couple school committee members voice that as a possible option. I also spent a lot of time reflecting on this as well. And I recognize the fact that we're of course closed on Christmas. We're also closed on Easter, and it falls on a Sunday. I didn't get a single email from the community that says, please don't take my Good Friday away. So I would entertain the thought process, like if others were on board, as much as I didn't want to pick and choose, I recognize that, Christmas is the predominant Christian holiday. Diwali is the predominant and Yom Kippur is the dominant. And if the school committee wanted to move in that direction, I think that could be something I could support of a elimination of Good Friday and keeping the other two on the calendar.
I did want to say that I really appreciated when you sent this chart. It actually reminds me of the school start time chart. And the percentages don't sway my thought at all. In fact, it sort of emboldens me even more to say, like, yay, Littleton for being on the forefront. And when I talk to my friends and they're like, you get the volley off, that's unheard of. Like, as a South Asian, it makes you feel proud. And so I can see some of these school committees next year using us as a model to say, well, actually Littleton does it and they figured it out. And so I see the percentages are low. They were low when we did the start time too, and we were sort of trailblazing. And I feel like if we're trailblazing inclusivity, then I would be really proud of that.
Appreciate that insight. I kind of do like the idea. I mean, listen, my goal in all of this is to get more time on learning, and also it's not going to give more time on learning, but the consistency of the full weeks of school, less disruption, and also potentially try to get the end date earlier, end date earlier, sorry, which I think is a goal of this calendar in general, as we'll talk about. And it's a good point, like, if you think about equity and as a Christian, you have Christmas not only off for the day, but for a week, right? The days before and after Easter, maybe that kind of covers that, checks that box. Take away Good Friday as a day off. As Justin said, I don't think we definitely didn't get one email asking to keep Good Friday. But we got others asking to keep the Jewish and you know, Yom Kippur and Diwali. Maybe, yeah, taking away Good Friday as a day off would be a good first step, or at least a step in the right direction of at least giving back some time. I'd have an uptick for that.
Brad?
Yeah, I wonder if we didn't get emails about it because there's no passion or because no one considered that we target that one holiday, that the Christian holiday would be one that we picked out. It's just interesting to me just to note that. If we're looking for equity, such a loaded word, balance, where the three major religions in this community, our schools reflect our communities, all have at least one protected holiday, which gives the people who practice that religion a chance to observe it with their family in ways that are important. And people who don't practice that holiday, an opportunity to learn about it. And we heard from members of the EI club when we visited them, how important it was. Hey, I got to go to the celebration with my buddies. I learned more about it. Then this accomplishes two of our goals. It allows us to promote inclusion as not just a buzzword, but an actual practice. It also allows us to get more calendar consistency and provides parents some relief. I hadn't considered. I think at first blush, I think I'd support this.
Okay. Because I set a precedent of hearing from citizens on this topic, it appears we have another hand raised in the audience. So if you could come to the podium, name it. I don't know who this guy is. Name it, please.
Chuck DeCoe, 609 Newtown Road. I actually did just send you an email saying, please don't eliminate Good Friday.
Thank you.
Just so you had at least one. I would say that I don't think you have to eliminate a Christian holiday, because in order to make way for inclusion and to incorporate other holidays, I think they can all be included, and to do the balance of the trade-off, because folks are off at Christmas. That's not a Christmas break any longer. That's a winter break. We don't call it Christmas. We eliminated Christmas from our vernacular when it comes to the schools. It's something that's been in place for many years. So I would advocate as a Christian, but an inclusive Christian, that I wouldn't trade one for another. And I'd ask that if you are going to vote to include any of them, that you include at least those three, because over that winter break, many people celebrate their own holidays, whether it be Kwanzaa or Christmas or Hanukkah, you know, for part of that break. Actually, depends on when it falls.
Depends what.
Sure.
Right.
But so I just wanted to just offer that up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Noted. Okay.
I think that Rosh Hashanah is not our holiday.
That's not.
Okay, so Brad, I agree with you. Like having that one protected holiday, I feel like is something that would be not necessarily a criteria, because like you said, you don't want to get in the business of saying yay or nay to holidays, but if everyone can have at least one protected holiday, and then we can work on those policies for the kids when they do have another holiday, that they're not feeling that conflict in school. I feel like that helps us build some really safe guidelines for everyone to prepare for the holidays that we are going to celebrate, and also understand that when there are holidays that aren't on the calendar, that it's still a safe space in our community and with the teachers, that they can take that time off. So I mean, if we've got Christmas, Yom Kippur, Diwali, what else? Those are our three. It seems that by taking Good Friday off, that's kind of a bonus Christian holiday. You know, it's kind of like adding that second layer on. So we add Yom Kippur on, you know, like where Rosh Hashanah on. You know, where does that end if we're trying to make a balance? We're already tipping the scales in an imbalanced way by having kind of that Christmas and the Good Friday on there, so. We didn't get much feedback on Good Friday, and like you said, it might have been because it wasn't on the necessarily, it wasn't the chocolate, I mean, we had it on the list of holidays to take off, and we really didn't get too much. Chuck, I appreciate saying something now, but we really haven't gotten much.
And I think it was because it wasn't
Yeah.
intended to be on the chopping block.
Sure.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. I think that's a very good point. And
Because you made it.
because I made it, I like to the record reflect, I agree with myself. And this doesn't always happen. You've been in meetings with me. I agree with myself. I think it's a great point. When I said I'm on almost a gut level, I like the idea of this. I may also like the idea of thinking about it and hearing from people. I know we need to move the calendar. I know. I don't know if we should just surprise the public with taking away Good Friday off the calendar without any kind of public discussion. I think we're empowered to, but whether it's proper, maybe that's a more procedural question.
If you look at the demographics as well,
Mm.
the Diwali, the South Asian population is one of the small ones, right? It's, and so I think we would hear from a lot of people. And the question is that what this decision is being made on?
Yeah,
because
that's-
the sheer number, how many of you heard of in support of Yom Kippur and in support of Diwali? And if we put out for Good Friday, you would hear from a lot, right? And I think it's more the discussion is, and we can do that. I'm not saying we shouldn't. Is that what is on the table here and what's up for discussion, or is it the one sacred holiday?
Yeah.
For holy day for each, because Diwali is actually preceded by 9 days prior to that, where we're celebrating, and then as I talked about, the day after New Year's, I would love Christmas Eve and Christmas, and the day after, actually Diwali is 9 whole days in India. There is one sacred day to celebrate, you know what I mean? And so I think, again, either direction that this goes, I'm just putting it out there. Whether we want to base this on values or we want to base it on community feedback.
When we say that Good Friday wasn't considered to be on the chopping block, is that true? I thought, I mean, what prompted all the community input? Weren't we saying we're considering getting rid of the 3 religious holidays? So Good Friday has been part of the discussion.
Yeah.
Maybe nobody ever imagined that we would maybe only get rid of
Yeah.
Good Friday, but it has been proposed that all 3 would become school days. So with that in mind, we did not hear from anyone saying, please don't get rid of Good Friday
And
as a holiday.
the folks that we did hear from expressed the strict observance of the religious holiday, be it Yom Kippur or Diwali, and how it impacts their ability to attend school.
Mhm.
And again, this is like dangerous territory where I'm passing judgment on religions. I don't believe that the same strict observance occurs on Good Friday. I don't think that there's the same level of families. I know, I said it would be difficult, but this is only becoming more difficult the
Yeah.
more we talk about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm prepared to make a motion unless someone else wants to make it, or
Well, and also, I mean, we talked about this when in your group made it has been incredible, by the way. Thank you so much. If I haven't already said it. Incredible. We talked about this last year, like that whole idea of if another culture becomes predominant or prevalent in our community, like do we look at Lunar New Year? Do we look at Eid, other holidays? And at some point it gets, where school ends up in date in July, like, do we just say all or none? It's hard. And how do we get in, like you said, be in that business of deciding what the threshold is? It's awesome that we have this vibrant Indian community in our town. It's phenomenal. It's a really hard conversation to have, but ultimately inclusivity can lead to like difficult decisions down the road.
I just caution you and, thinking that Good Friday may not be important. I mean, the majority of the people that live in Littleton, I would say if we're dividing into religions, I think over 50% would be Catholics that are still Catholic and attend churches. So I think from my point of view, what we're trying to do is lead the way in terms of equity and inclusion. And I personally, I feel a little uncomfortable that we're embracing two of the holidays and not the third holiday. And I do think perhaps there was an understanding, whether it's real or not, that Good Friday wasn't the one that was really going to be discussed. It's just been the longest holiday in our calendar that's been a day off in this district since the creation of this district. So just something to think about.
Yeah, and I would say, I don't know if this is right or wrong. I mean, I would say that all these towns that have a no in the Good Friday column probably had a yes at one point in time,
Oh, for
you know? Okay, so I think the direction is shifting away from the observance of religious holidays. I like your point about Littleton being progressive and this is forward thinking and this is a good thing for the community. I know it's not gonna be, I mean, did we really think we were gonna be debating religious holidays when we signed up to do this job? I don't think so. But the reality.
Air filters, what I was for.
That's right.
The reality is it's part of the calendar. You know, we're trying to get more efficient. I mean, when I ran for school committee, I was like, if we could run the district more like a business and make efficient decisions and our output is academic success versus profits. You know, in the corporate world, you don't have these holidays off. We have them off. Like the kids are home, but a lot of adults, unless you're celebrating the holiday yourself, you're at work. I mean, I'm looking among, I mean, I don't want to punt. I don't want to continue to punt these topics. So I would be in favor of trying to make a decision here this evening and then let the chips fall. And if we have to readdress it, we have to readdress it. If we get a decision wrong, we can likely fix it.
And if I can just add too, just when, you know, we're kind of talking about consistency for the kids in March, there's not a single full week. So if by taking off Good Friday, that's the one full week in that entire month. So if our primary goal is to be equitable and our secondary goal is to try to create some consistency and give the kids some longevity and stamina in school, you know, that Good Friday allows us to accomplish just giving that 1 week of that month where the kids are in there in school for that entire week. So I just wanted to add that, you know, it's just another kink in that schedule in March that just adds another day when, you know, we have all acknowledged that Christmas is off. Christmas is that Catholic day, that sacred day that we have off for those groups of individuals. And this is kind of a secondary one to add on to it. And it's starting to tap into that kind of logistical problem that we're running into with the kids. So
how about this? I'll float the all three and see if that works. And then if it doesn't work, we'll maybe just look at the one. But I move that that for the 2023-2024 school calendar, we remove all three religious holidays.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. First made by Chairman McCarthy, second by Gold. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
okay.
Motion fails. I'll make a second motion. I move that the Littleton School Committee remove Good Friday from the list of observed holidays for the 23-24 calendar.
I'll second.
Motion made by Chairman McCarthy, seconded by Ms. Gold. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you, Brad.
Are there any other motions on this topic?
I will note that, so it's not a motion, we need to, the policy committee should revisit the relevant policy JH, I believe it is, in our packet, but we should make sure we revisit that and strengthen it. We've heard from students, we've heard from families that it is not strictly enforced or uniformly enforced, and we need to revisit that and then to communicate to our entire school that what the new policy is and how we'd like to see it followed.
I think that'd be a great idea. We good on this one? Good. All right. Next. 2023, 2024 draft calendar, further discussion and anticipated vote. Last week, we saw our first look at what is the draft calendar for next school year. There were, as there has been in years past, a lot of color on the calendar. There were some ideas floated around as to what changes could possibly be made. I'd like to view the calendar again, see if some of those same ideas or new ideas come about, have a discussion, see which ones, if any, we like. We can either vote the calendar through as presented, or we could discuss or vote through a possible change or amendment to the calendar. Does that sound like a plan? Yes.
And I did send you all an email about the meetings I had last week with the calendar committee and OC. And just a quick review of it. We did talk about September 1st, and was met with a kind of a lukewarm reaction, but everybody understood that if we chose to move in that direction, we could do it. There's nothing that would prohibit us from doing it. We did move a half day from November and put it in September. And then at the AC meeting, we had a discussion about the conference days. You can see we moved them to the Thanksgiving week. The reason for that was to create a full week of learning. I was not lukewarm, but I thought it would be worth putting it on there. I guess one concern that I mentioned and was shared with some was that seems to be a very popular break, and I know throughout my entire career, even when I was in Canada, we have a number of families that would prefer to take that whole week off, especially if they're traveling. So I'm wondering if doing that may have a similar effect with some of our families. It's something to consider. But the intentions were good to try to get a full week of learning.
Sure. Yuri, you're able to put that up so we can look at it.
So just a clarification, I feel, and I think there's a strong appetite in our community also, that there are way too many half days in our town. So am I right in thinking that for all of us, like the ultimate goal is to try as we can to reduce the total number of half days overall in our schools? But what we're talking about today is what we have to do within the confines of the existing contract.
That's correct.
Like, let's be clear about that, because the contract is up for renegotiation. As part of that renegotiation, we're looking to reduce the number of total half days. But right now, we have to work within the existing contract.
Correct. And we should,
Okay.
The contract negotiations remain confidential, so we should be careful not to discuss the actual negotiations for the audience's education. Public record, the current contract states that there are 12 early release days for the purpose of professional development. Those are on the calendar. There are also 6 early release days for student conferences, K-5. Those are on the calendar as well. That brings the K-5 population to 18. And then we have 2 optional half days on the calendar, which is the last day of school, which I think obviously makes a lot of sense. And then the other one, which is typical, is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, would be the 20th half day on the calendar.
Can I just say one other thing? Talking about the operating within the existing constraints of the current contract. That's where the September 1 date comes. We heard from a lot of people saying, hey, why don't you move it up? And a lot of ideas. There's certain things we can control and certain things we can't. And the September 1 date is something that's in our current contract, and we're honoring that contract.
So this is draft 2, a couple changes since last week. Does anyone from the committee have feedback for school committee members, Superintendent Clenchey?
So I like starting earlier, as early as we can within the constraint of the contract, would be September 1st. So I think that's a good start. Gives us an extra day.
Yeah, and I hate to jump in on you, but let's just clarify that when we refer to the start date, the teachers start 1 day before the students. So I believe what you mean by that is the contract allows the first start date for the school year to be the 1st, therefore the students would then go on the 5th. Okay.
Because Friday is the first, Monday is off, the students will start the fifth instead of the sixth. So that gives us an extra day, which is everything earlier by a day. I think it's an interesting idea to stack the parent-teacher conferences right before Thanksgiving. On the positive side, it, instead of creating a whole bunch of disruption every week of November, it just pulled all the disruption into 1 week, right? It's like a terrible week in a way, like it's half day, potential PD day, and then we're off Thursday, Friday. So all the disruption happens in 1 week. And the other, so that's one downside. The other downside is, do people go away for the week prior to Thanksgiving? And if they do, they have trouble making parent-teacher conferences, but they can always do them remotely. That's always an option. On the positive side, it cleans up the calendar, makes the rest of November look less crazy and less disrupted. So it, like I said, pulls everything into that 1 week for the most part. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
I have
Dina?
one comment, one question. Why is there a half day December 20th and not the 13th? Because it sort of looks like we're very much in an every other week MO.
We could move that.
Okay, I didn't know if there was a reason.
Actually, what happened is we had two of those half days. And then
Previous draft had December 6th only.
so we just left it in there because we had one and we wanted to space them out. So-
Okay,
But we definitely could do that.
yeah, because if according to this, there's one the week of the November 29th. It's almost pretty consistent every other week. I know there's 2 weeks, but November 29th, and you skip the 6th and the 13th, then you have a full week, then you have a break.
Right.
So that, I think, could make sense if there wasn't a reason that the 13th wasn't chosen. And then my other sort of crazy out there thought was, what about moving the half day on September 13th to the first day the kids are in school? So if we're talking about September 1st, and then that would make September 5th the first day the kids are in school. I don't know. You know, it's already a disruptive day for parents. It's the first day. We're figuring out schedules. As an educator, I wonder if, you know, you've had the kids for a half day. It's a marathon to get through a half day on the first day of school. And then you're like, oh my God, I need to do this, and I need to do this, and I need to do this. Is it actually helpful and for teachers to be able to talk together, for administrators to talk to teachers after having kids for that first day? I don't know.
It's a possibility. I guess I've been programmed for many years to spend that whole day with kids, getting routines down and starting the process of making them feel welcome.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear from
Yeah,
the administration as well for that comment.
Don't kill me if it's a horrible idea. Just threw it out. I don't know. Okay.
You haven't heard all of our horrible ideas yet. You want to go now, though?
About the day of the 20th.
Yeah.
The reason we didn't, because we did talk about this on Tuesday at our admin council meeting. The reason we didn't choose the 13th is if you look at the last week in November, there, I believe is a half day there, correct? And then we have 2 full weeks of continuity for the children, the week of the 4th, the week of the 11th, and then that last week can always be a little, you know, festive and activity driven. So we thought the half day there so that we could have 2 continuous week of fun. That was our, because we didn't talk about doing it, but we talked about having consistency for the kids those 2 weeks.
Okay.
The other thing about the half day, I personally, I think I heard Cheryl say it as well, I really like to have them all day, the kids all day. Not that I don't want PD with the staff. I think that is a good day to have them all there to talk about the lunchroom, because they wouldn't have lunch if they didn't go into the lunchroom. To do that on that Tuesday, buses continuously run late. Our buses don't get there, and that's to be expected. You know, they're learning the routes. There's new kids, so buses don't get in sometimes till 9:30 that day.
Yeah.
And to think that we're dismissing, you know, 2.5 hours after that, the kids are just getting it. They're starting to do building tours with the kids, showing them where the bathrooms are, how to get to the art room, music room. So I just would vote for it.
Okay.
Same, exactly the same. I'm just thinking about the day, that first day, even for 4th graders and 5th graders who've been there already to be in their new classrooms and tour through the building and any new initiatives we've had over the summer. It's really important that we spend that day walking every class through the building and going through different classrooms and things. And it really does take the whole day.
What would you guys think about doing a half day on the last day of school?
Everyone supports that.
It's not complicated.
What's that second to last
In your
day?
black and white pockets.
No, really, what about the second to last day? I mean, when things are already winding down, I don't know.
I just don't know what you would do the second to last, like that, the last day is an optional one. Sorry to
Yeah,
jump in out of turn.
no, there.
We have 20 half days, 18 of them have a purpose, 2 are by choice.
Yeah.
We couldn't necessarily, I don't think we'd take one by choice and slide it to the second to last day of school. I think we'd lose value there.
Why are we keeping the 2 by choice then?
So, one of the things that I was looking at is, when I first saw this calendar, I was like, ooh, that week of Thanksgiving's tough.
Yeah.
And what makes it tough is the 3 half days. Well, we would have already had one of them. And by adding the 2 others, I see a purpose there. Parent teacher conferences are going to get checked off. It's in the contract. They have to occur. I also see that we have 12 professional development half days, and why not take the optional day and make it a professional development day? So now we're down to 19 half days. We've eliminated one
Yes.
because we can take a PD day, perhaps March 6th, for example, and slide it to November 22nd. And then the other month that we run into conferences with a lot of half days, I've now just eliminated one. So I've got greater consistency, time in the classroom, more mojo, all that good stuff.
Yes, I agree with that.
I totally get.
I'm just trying to follow you here and I
So-
missed something.
so
You're not
November-
suggesting a full day, are you?
November 22nd remains a half day,
PD.
but it becomes a PD day.
Well, then we have to make that day.
No, it's.
No, it's a PD day in the afternoon.
So it's not a full day.
It's
full-
already a half day.
It's a full day for the staff.
But if, as soon as you do not have students in school for a minimum of.
It remains a half day for the students.
It does not count in the 180 days that are mandated by the state.
It remains a half day for the students.
The student experience doesn't change and Justin, I understand Justin's thing, except for they get actually more time on learning because the 6th is a full day. March 6th will be a full day.
Correct.
If I'm understanding what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Just Kelly, on November 22nd, it's a half day for everybody. There's nothing that occurs in the afternoon.
Oh, I would do. Okay.
So what I would do is I would take what occurs in the afternoon on March 6th for the staff, and I would slide that to November 22nd, and I would make March 6th a full day for everybody, regular instructional day.
I guess the only caution I have is there's something that's called precedent setting. We've been doing this for many, many years, way before I came here, I'd say 25, 30. The union would have a right to say that we've taken something away that we've agreed to do for a long time without bargaining it, so they would have a right to bargain. Because it was precedent setting for many years. Or I could check with our lawyer, but.
Per the contract, we would, open that invitation to bargain it. I mean, we would.
Part of me says if you're really adamant about that, I would respectfully ask that you wait till you take a vote on this calendar until we consult with legal. Because we certainly don't want to create a chain reaction on this if we can prevent.
And my question about this is that, I think PD has real value. And without weighing in on the proper number of days, taking a day in March when assuming they're getting scores back and they're implementing the new curriculum and they're thinking about those things. I just can't imagine, without questioning the professionalism of our staff and leaders and teachers, that a lot of effective PDs will happen in the 3 hours before Thanksgiving break.
For sure.
And so if that becomes hey, self-started, you get PD hours, read something, talk to your team and figure out what you'll read over the break or something like that, then maybe that's, I don't know. But I can't imagine we'll have really effective meetings that advance our students' education on Wednesday from 1 to 3:30. So I don't know your PD calendar. I don't know if you have it set. I don't know how that, you've explained this before, and I'm frankly, I've forgotten how many of these are kind of self-led PD kind of things and kind of, work in your classroom and consult with others. If it were possible to make that day one of those days, then maybe this makes sense to me. But if it's, my sense from being on this committee for 3 years is our PD is really well organized and effective.
Well structured.
Yeah.
Beth, do you have a comment you'd like to make? Or-
We can organize them.
Yeah.
Right, there's 6 faculty-led days,
Mhm.
4 building-based days, and 2 district-based days. And so every year we look at where the days kind of fall and what makes the most sense for what's happening that year, right? So I can't always guarantee you that the first 2 are district-based, the next, right? So they do somewhat alter between district and school-based days, the faculty-led based days, we keep typically around the same time, so staff know exactly what to expect and kind of when to start thinking about proposals and whatnot. I think the 22nd, expecting staff to participate in professional development the day before Thanksgiving, and a long weekend, when for years we have not had that expectation. I'm just having a little bit of a hard time kind of digesting that one and thinking about if I were in their shoes, what does that mean? What does that mean for my classroom that day? Am I going to be producing the where I want to be producing for that afternoon to move forward? I'm not sure the cost outweighs the benefit at this point in time.
And the benefit to your mind is we get another full week in March.
Yep.
We get 2 weeks in a row coming right off February vacation.
The kids pick up 3 hours of instruction.
Yeah.
Right? Because I mean, we have 20 half days on here for the K to 5. We would now be down to 19.
Yeah.
I acknowledge that that hasn't been done in the past. I acknowledge that, as an employee, you might not be psyched to be there at the end of the day, but I also want to say that a lot of these ideas are a result of how busy our calendar is. So what we're trying to do here is create a calendar that's provides the highest level of consistency for our students and their learning, and also takes into consideration the needs of our community as it's shifting to a dual income, household. Mom or dad is not home in the afternoon on all these days anymore. It's quite difficult. And we heard from everybody, just nearly everybody that weighed in on the religious holiday things, about how dissatisfied they were with the number of half days. So in my opinion, we can go from potentially 20 to 19 with that shift. I don't hate the idea of the first day of school being a half day, even though the administration feels that it takes a full day to do the tour of the building. I mean, you've got another 179 days to finish the remainder of the tour. I get it. That first day is kind of a mess anyways. Parents' days are interrupted. You're going to put the kid on the bus. You're going to be there to see him after the bus. It kind of slides because it becomes the first day of school. It kind of slides another week where we've got some consistency. And I'm 100% for having the first day of staff be the first, students go on the 5th. And then with the elimination of Good Friday, our last day of school, if we were to do that, becomes Friday the 14th. I'd be willing to bet Kelly calls at least one snow day. So we go to the 17th, possibly.
Most likely.
Yeah. I mean, we have 3 snow days and 7 inches of snow this year at the time. But
2 snow days.
There have been 3.
Right?
2.
2.
The only thing I would ask.
it gets us out. It gets us out before Juneteenth, and in the event that we have a snowy winter, by doing that, we definitely get out prior to the last week of June, which we also heard from a number of families that being in school the last week of June causes stress with summer camps and in care and job opportunities and things like that.
The only thing I would ask, and most school committees have said to me, please keep us out of trouble. So if you're really serious about moving March 20th and taking away a half PD day, my recommendation as your superintendent is you serve notice to the union. Let's do it the proper way, because you do not want to get yourself in a legal corner.
You mean if we make the day before Thanksgiving a
Right,
PD
if
day?
you're reducing a PD, even though I don't know what word you want to use, it's been in the calendar, we don't expect anything from staff during that day. The fact that we've done it for so many years does create a liability for us, and I'm certain of that. So the only way to do this properly is to serve notice, and then they can respond to that notice as part of our negotiation process. Take it next week.
Could I counter with the fact that, again, in the interest of trying to get things accomplished here, could we vote on a calendar such as maybe where the start date is, and then not address November 22nd? Be silent on that.
Yeah.
If we like it, serve notice, and then just revisit changing a half day or, sliding. I mean, I don't think that has a major impact on families. In March of 2023.
As long as you leave the number of
March,
days
yeah.
as is, you can come back later and make an alteration.
Correct. Those kids are in school either way on those days.
Right.
And I think what our parents really need is the start date. More so than what's happening on March 6th afternoon.
Right.
Right now.
Could I just add something to the conversation? But so I like the idea of moving the PD day to the second, because it gives us that, it gives us that extra week that we're looking for the longevity for the kids in March, right?
Mhm.
And if the argument is that it kind of goes against precedent, well, we just voted off Good Friday, and that's been a holiday, that's.
But that also makes people mad. I mean.
We did it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Willing to take the repercussions or see what happens with it. And if another reason is, yeah, I agree, it would be hard to stay engaged the day before Thanksgiving. I don't think anybody would like it, but we have proposed doing half days on Fridays, and the argument against that is that the kids stay engaged, even if it's before a long week or a long holiday weekend. So, I feel like when it comes to the students, we can kind of make certain rules, but then when it comes to the teachers, we're kind of shifting on those things. So that's just what I wanted to add with those two arguments, that they just kind of go against other things that we've tried to do for the students, to accommodate maybe some of the desires of the adults, the teachers there.
There was more to it, Stacy, than that. We share specialist teachers with Schcmte and Russell Street, and Friday is not a good day for the specialist teachers because they're spread so thin. So it's something that we brought to the school committee's attention a few times. And I'm not opposed to playing with that day in March, and it's different than Good Friday. So you need to keep that on the calendar for now if you're going to make that change until we serve proper legal notice to the union. And then if you would like to revisit it at a later date, that's your prerogative as a school committee, then we're going to have a legal reading of whether we need to do something or not. But to not serve notice would not be in your best interest.
Can I mention something about the 22nd as well?
Sure.
Just in consideration of teachers who don't have the latitude of choosing vacation days when you have the school calendar, with regard to the precedent setting. Thanksgiving is very much a celebration of family, and we all know it's a big travel time, and I would imagine that a lot of staff are, and have for many years traditionally planned their going to visit family, and when they get out on that half day, they're traveling in order to be able to spend time with their families on Thanksgiving. Or just make sure to keep that in mind.
These are all good points. It just.
495 at 1 o'clock is just as bad as 495 at 5.
Well, I think
But
I mean, there are some people that are traveling far distances to see their family, and we did a lot of deep dive to look at districts for the holy days. And I am going through, I've worked in many districts. I'm trying to think of one that doesn't have the half day on the day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, schools are not having school.
Yeah.
If there's one thing we heard from all sides, as Justin said earlier, from all sides of the community, it was please 20 half days is so hard on us as a family,
Oh, I know.
especially with dual income.
Yeah.
As you can hear, we're trying everything, but we're getting a lot of pushback, and I understand it all. It all makes sense. We're trying to come up with some creative ways to minimize, we're talking about 1 extra day instead of a half day, 2 at most. We're trying. I mean,
Right, and just
any other
thinking about
ideas?
the Thanksgiving, and I feel like that's probably the one day that families, we're all, from an equity standpoint, we're all celebrating Thanksgiving and family. Oh,
Sure.
and so.
It's been the superintendent's recommendation that we table that discussion, and I'd like to.
Yeah, I'd like to make a
close
motion.
discussion on that particular day, and if we have a motion. to move
Yeah,
forward.
I'll make a motion because we do need to take some movement, make some movement in the calendar that we begin the school year as the contract stipulates on September 1st, with the first day of school for students being September 5th, 2023.
And the only other edit, of course, would be the removal of March 29th on the calendar as shown.
Yes.
Yeah, motion made by Mr. Gold. I mean, what?
Austin?
Mr. Austin. And my- Yeah,
Related to this whole.
my apologies.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
And I don't want to hold up the vote. I'm thinking, from a parent perspective, and I've mentioned this very early when I started this committee, the gamble of, is this Friday, is this Wednesday, a half Wednesday or not? Let me just guess, it's like really stressful. And I think, Michelle, you brought up a really valid point of 2 consistent weeks. And perhaps that outweighs as a parent, this calendar very beautifully, almost every other week has a half day. And in that regard, if, whatever, November 22nd we leave and March 6th, could the March 6th Wednesday be March 13th and then the conference day be March 14th? It's like, I'm just trying to think of ways as a parent that it's predictable and consistent, and it's still achieving the best outcome for the students and the administration.
Okay.
Is this all not important right now? We just need to get to a start date and vote?
So we have a motion on the floor. We'd have a second. Discussion's proper. The only way to move forward with that would be if you would like to make an alternative motion.
I see.
What I would suggest is that I think the reason I worded the motion as I did is I think we need to know a start date and to know that this calendar will reflect the vote we took earlier tonight.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have a continued,
That's all.
we'll revisit half day rounds. I would suggest that we put that in our back pocket. We keep thinking about it,
Got it.
but that we vote on the
Yeah, I
motion
didn't know
and
if
set
once
the
it
start
was
date.
through, like, then no comment.
No, I think we'll have to come back because we'll talk to council and we're going to hear from folks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so hearing no further discussion, there's a motion and a second. Motion again was start date of September 1st, student start date September 5th. And of course, as noted earlier, the removal of March 29th, which is Good Friday. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we'll mark that unanimous. Thank you. Okay, I think this next topic is going to go quick. This is what everyone tuned in for, which is the school committee calendar. So this is the proposed 2023-2024 school committee calendar. There's it's up on the board already. So this is advance notice for school committee, the possible meeting dates, or these would be the meeting dates for next year.
I think y'all should meet every week.
You should pull your papers. So of note, just August 17th, 18th, that's considered the summer workshop for the school committee. And then we kind of get into a pattern where we meet twice a month. When we run into the holiday season, we meet once a month. It pretty closely resembles what we're doing this year. My only question, I don't know if any, was there are 3 meetings in May. I don't know if that's an attempt to not meet in June, or if there's something that you're thinking we're going to be discussing with vigor in May of next year.
It's just the way it worked out with
Okay.
2-week intervals.
Okay,
So you would like an additional meeting in June, we can certainly.
any discussion on that?
No.
As presented? Oh, I'll make a motion to move forward with the 2023-2024 calendar committee, school committee calendar as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Non-controversial piece of business. Very good. All right. We will now move on to old business item number 4, which is the transportation bid discussion, continued discussion, anticipated vote. Just for the audience, of course, this ties into the school start time. So the school committee's been working very hard, analyzing the pros and cons of making a drastic change here, which is shifting our high school and middle school start times later. Study was done, engaged. Results were we needed to get off of a 3-tier system where the buses run 3 routes to move to a 2-tier system. We need more buses to do so. We're also at the end of our 5-year bus contract. So we were faced with a bit of a double whammy here where the bus contract, of course, is going up because it's an opportunity for an adjustment to take place. We're in a period of high inflation right now, which doesn't help us. So that went up, and it went up more than anticipated. And then unfortunately, the move to go to 14 buses was greater than anticipated as well. So last meeting, we saw a bunch of numbers. It was a lot to digest. We had some discussion. Those slides are available again, but in summary, the additional spend for next year would be $484,000 on top of what we would renew our current bus pricing at. We're all aware of the benefits. The money's a little bit more. The committee was in favor of moving forward with the project, based upon some earlier assumptions when the money was less. And it was subject to finding the resources and possibly needing to negotiate with the teachers union. They have served a response to our notice about that. We haven't had much discussion as it relates to that. They're kind of waiting for us to move this forward. But they did engage us with a response, so we will need to potentially bargain the impact of this on them. So the numbers are in. It costs $484 more on top of the current. And why don't we go around the room real quickly and see if that changed anyone's opinion, or if anyone wants to discuss anything in particular. I don't know if you want to. Maybe don't bring the numbers up unless we need them, Steve.
Whatever you want.
Can I start?
Sure.
So I am very much for doing this still. The increased cost is unfortunate, not that surprising, but wish it were different, but it's not. I still think it's very, very worthwhile doing. And one thing I really wanted to stress is that when we, I led, study with the consultants, and I think people are saying like, gosh, if I knew that this was going to give the older kids, 45 or 50 minutes extra, like maybe that would be worth it. But if it's only 25 or 30, it doesn't seem worth it. And I don't think we can split hairs like that. I think that we won't really know how much time we gain until we actually are like a year into this. The first year is going to be a little messy, a little crazy, right? We're not going to know for sure how much time we gained, but we will know after the first year or two. And at that point, once we're on a 2-tier system, we can really play with pushing things a little bit later if we can. We don't want to get, Russell Street and Shaker Lane starting too late, but we can play around with the times. And I think that I don't want us to get hung up on, is this worth it for 25 or 30 extra minutes? I think that the 2-tier system is really, really critical to our town to get us to a point where we're doing the right thing for the students, getting them the sleep that they need and the schedules that are best for them. And so I just, again, I think that, we've heard from people like, if it were this amount of time, I'd say it was worth it, but we just aren't going to know until we implement it. But once we get the 2-tier system in place, we will have more flexibility to do the right thing and potentially push things a little bit later and a little bit later. That is the way that it's going in the state, in the country. And I think we need to do the right thing through the lens of what's right for the students.
I would just add to that I think if we were able to, we had a Noah's Ark working group, if you will, and took all consideration into effect. And if we were looking at the research, really the high school would be the one on that 2nd-tier start time. But we got a lot of feedback, and I think if we went from 3-tier to that, it's such a drastic change that would be shell shock. But if we think longer term, I think that's probably the direction we would go in eventually. That's the direction Eastern Mass and a lot of the country has gone in. And we are trailblazing just by doing what we're doing right now, but we won't get to that until we go to a 2-tier. So you're right, there was a lot of feedback of, is it worth it for 25 minutes? For me, this is sort of the first step in achieving the longer term goal, which is, and we heard from the elementary school administrators and staff too, that they would actually prefer to start earlier. And so this is sort of that in-between step to me. And so it's worth it when I'm thinking of that bigger picture. Oh my gosh, I lost my second train of thought, so I'll come back, but I had another comment that I wanted to add.
Okay. Stacy?
I think that it would be helpful for me to know what the dollar difference is per year between the two options, to understand like how much is this 25 minutes actually costing us, and what could that number be going to? So I see the numbers here. So for like the 3-tier, it's $164,000 difference. Is that right?
So it's 484 in year one.
That's the
484.
that's the difference.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Just to change for our start time, just to get the extra buses, right? That's what we're.
And assume that that number goes up by,
5%.
5%.
yeah, but both
So-
numbers would go up by 5%.
Right.
So they'd assume it goes up by like a half, well, both numbers would be going up by 5%.
numbers
One
by
number's
5%.
bigger than the other, so point, whatever. It's not much. It's,
So like for the tier 2 model, the 268,000. You guys see that? That's the difference, right? For that 5 years, that's the delta.
268,000, I believe, is the cumulative assumed 5% cost of living adjustment or consumer price index as the contract rises. So it goes from 1.2 to 1.3 to 1.4.
That's like once we already made the change, like. we
Yeah,
already made that
right.
investment, right? Like
Yes.
taking a $400,000 investment to change to get the buses, to change the times, right? And then each year, that's gonna increase anyway. It's gonna increase anyway.
Yeah,
whether
so
you're
the-
2-tier or 3-tier, right?
Yeah, so that your question can be answered on this slide. So the net adjustment over time on the 3-tier model is 164. It's 268. So that's 104,000. So it's 484 plus the 104 over time. That's what the spread would grow to.
Okay.
Sure, no one was able to follow that if you were looking at this, but
You want to know?
Right.
no, that's okay.
And Stacey, again, it might not, I wouldn't think of it as like, what are we paying for a 25-minute shift? I think that we need to put this new structure and framework in place to potentially, like, this is step one,
Yes, no,
pay more over time.
yes, no, I agree with you when it comes to like being on the school committee and deciding like what's better for the students. We already have defined that this is absolutely better for the students. But as a taxpayer, they are thinking, okay, this is good for the students, that's great, but there are also a lot of other things that are good for the students. How should that money be allocated? So I'm trying to kind of wear both those different hats there and try to say like, yes, as a committee, we've said, yes, we want to do this, but now we have to look at the financials of it and see how it's affecting the schools financially. And it's obviously a pretty big hit. So that's why I still don't know where I rest on the issue as to whether or
So-
not it's.
Stacy, I don't know if this will be helpful. If we raised $100,000 of additional revenue, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the list of pros, cons, and considerations that I sent today. Our school choice fund would pay $267,000 the first year, and then would go up probably by whatever the bus contract goes up. The plan would be to recoup this money back and put it into the appropriation budget within a 4 or 5 year period. That's the only way this would be sustainable over time. If we can't do that, it's not sustainable. So the transportation fee is something we need to visit at another meeting. I put a note in here. I think the increases that we would pass on to families in this town of $100,000 would be too high. I would suggest that we maybe start at 50 and figure out what percentage increase that is, and then throughout time, increase fees like most districts do, 2 or 3% a year. And then just tonight, in a conversation, I don't think we adjusted fees for at least 17, 18 years in the district. So, but that, I hope that helps in terms of when we look at this proposal, what we're really faced with the year one is that $267,000. We do have that money in school choice. Our school choice balance is healthy. And as if you look at the numbers that Steve created for year to year for expenditures through school choice, 3 or 4 or 5 years we're fine. But after that, it starts dipping, and we all know that our town is growing. We're going to need to hire more staff as we have more students come into our district. And we're not going to be able to rely on the school choice revenue as much as we have in the past, because as more students move in, we're going to have perhaps fewer or less seats. And in the information, the data that we sent out to you, the next 3 years, we have a fairly significant number of school choice students graduating. So in order to perpetuate the revenue of $450,000 a year, we would have to take in the same number of students. I think 1 year, so 11 students. I've never asked to take 11 students in kindergarten since I've been here. I don't imagine we may have a year where we have a lower enrollment, but if I was to speculate, we may be able to take in 5 or 6 students a year, and that would probably be max. So our school choice fund will go down despite the fact that our community is growing. It just depends on how long that's going to take. So just things to consider. We're in a very good financial spot, as we pointed out many times. And you read my prelude to this whole thing that I sent out to you. Just like you, I've been thinking about this every day, every night. And I'm it's a difficult decision. I'm on the fence and I slip over to one side, and then all of a sudden I go over to the other side. But the good thing is we have a choice, and we have the funding to do it if you choose to do so.
Can I ask a question?
And to be clear, the numbers I forecasted in school choice will change depending on the school committee decision on what to do with the increased fees. So if you don't increase the phase height, that money comes out of school choice. That depletes that school choice funds a little bit faster than I forecast.
You got
There was a lot of emails and there's been comments about this directly resulting in tax increase. Do we know that that's the case, or how much that would be, or is that an assumption people are making, that if we vote this through the way we are, next year their taxes will?
No,
not as a result of the busing.
Okay.
so we are, yeah, I mean,
Everything else probably going on.
Like all together cumulatively, but that's what I'm trying to understand, like the impact that this will have, because we heard from a lot of emails of people that wrote and said, don't do this because my taxes will increase. Is that true, or is that an assumption?
the assumption is that taxes will go up, and that probably is true as
Yes.
well, right? Because
Yes.
taxes go up every year.
Yeah, right.
And because IBM's not there and it's a $900,000 hole, we heard that last week in our budget, in the town budget, not school.
Yeah.
The proposal here is to pay for the increase in cost from savings.
Yeah.
Okay, and then over time, rely less on savings and more on future income, and that income is tax dollars. We heard from the town administrator last meeting that they're forecasting about a 5% increase for us.
Yeah.
We were to ask for more than that. I mean, ultimately, we can choose to do this, but I think long-term, the taxpayer is going to be the one to choose, because if our budgets don't get approved going forward, we might have to revert back to a different system. So like I said before, if we make the wrong call, we probably undo it or be forced to undo it if we just don't have the future tax revenue to support this. So over time, we're going to pay for this out of savings to get it going in a similar strategy that was initially proposed for the kindergarten situation, but may not have been implemented the exact same way. And then shift the burden out of savings and onto the tax base. And how successful we're going to be with that is up to the select board, finance committee, and ultimately the taxpayer that votes at town meeting. So
Okay.
just to make sure everybody's on the same page. the 5% placeholder that the town has in the budget, even with the 5%, there was a structural deficit forecasted by the town. So that 5% increase to the school budget every year is not guaranteed.
Understood.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the only other comment, the advocacy and the people around this table is paramount in making this work. So we have the select board, we have FinCom, we have the school committee who advocates for sufficient money to move our district forward. So I think those three bodies together have to hopefully be working in harmony as we move forward.
Brad?
Yeah. As we said before, our budgets reflect our priorities. We talked about that a lot. This is the single thing we can do that will improve the educational and mental health experience of all of our students. We have money because people have been very careful stewards of the resources. We built up, I think, Steve, last meeting I asked, in the past, what has the school committee had in this kind of reserve? Well, it's 1 million, 1.3 million. If I read these numbers correctly, we can fund this the way we're funding without an additional expense to the taxpayer the first couple of years and still have a reserve of 2 million at the end of it, which would be, by my math, 170, 180% of what school committees had in reserve in the past. Every professional organization, every educational organization, every medical organization, every mental health organization says this is the thing we can do. Massachusetts, in this case, hasn't been a leader. If I recall correctly, we have the earliest start times in the nation, and Littleton currently has among the earliest start times in Massachusetts. We've got the money, we should do it. We had an exhaustive process. We heard from everybody. The numbers more than we thought, but we can afford it because this committee and committees before us did the work of creating a rainy day fund. It's raining. What, right?
Yeah,
It's
the right time.
the right time.
If not
This is-
this, what else?
Yeah, if not, I mean, this has been on the school committee's agenda for the last 10, 12 years, right? Back when they were saying we haven't raised bus fees in 5 years. And my guess is if we don't have the appetite to tackle it now, another committee won't for another 10 or 15 years. We know that's important. These kids have this kind of experience that we hope to provide with this. We have a chance to revisit it. We can do it with the funds, if I'm reading the numbers right, with the funds we have set aside without bankrupting that fund and without immediately transferring the cost to the taxpayers. And the committee can revisit. I think we should do it.
Okay. Value everyone's opinion. I'll just simply add that, a $484,000 difference it's a significant spend. It's a lot of money. It's, somewhere between probably, would you get 6 or 8 different, 8 extra staff members, full-time teachers if we needed to. The financial scenario here, of course, has variables in it, which were explained. So we're definitely going into uncharted waters here. But for me, when we looked at the other districts and the start times, and what became clear to me was many districts are on a 2-tier system. And we're on a 3-tier system. And we're on a 3-tier system because a lot of the decisions that we've made, that previous school committee members have made, have been very fiscally conservative. And that's why we have a large school choice fund. Okay. So yeah, I'm noticing sort of a shift in the momentum here, or the tide, which is let's reinvest in our district and let's take this opportunity. So, and I get the one thing I'll say is I'm not 100% sure that this benefits everyone. I don't think that statement's accurate because the lower elementary kids, we're not changing their start time really. And we hear the argument, my child's just going to stay up later, or it just shifts everything. So I don't think that this has a positive impact on 1,700 individuals. I think that this helps 300, 400 people a lot. And I think the other points that were made about this is just the first step in potentially a multi-year step process in flipping the schools. You can't do that without doing this first. So for that reason, I'm begrudgingly for it because I don't want to spend the money, but I know that it's the right thing to do.
It won't help 1,700 students all in the same year, but assuming those students stay in the Littleton school system, it will help them all eventually, equally.
And it'll help a lot of families, I think, and we heard from people getting the 2 elementary schools starting at the same time, consistency of schedule, consistency of getting people out the door for 6-7 year period.
Sure.
I think it helped me as a parent, knowing that. And so it's a point taken. We're not flipping a switch and everybody's mental health is improving by 20% first year. But ideally, this creates an atmosphere where they can all progress and benefit from peer plan. Do we need a motion? Because
So I'm of the opinion that we can, I mean, I've listened to everybody. If you guys are in agreement here, I'm hearing consistency or a consensus among the school committee that basically we voted this through. One of the hurdles we had to clear was financial. We've addressed that this evening.
Authorization, school committee for me to sign the contract.
Okay. That makes sense. To finish my thought, there's consensus. We took a vote on it previously. We wanted to cross the money hurdle. We kind of had that discussion this evening. We seem to all be in favor of going forward. So I don't necessarily need to vote through, the school start time project again. But I'm overhearing that the business manager, Steve Mark, would like authorization from the school committee to sign the bus contract on behalf of the district with the bid for 14 buses. Is that accurate?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I move that the school committee authorize Steve Mark to sign the contract for a 2-tier bus system with D buses.
Motion made by Mr. Austin
I'll second the motion.
and Ms. Gold. There we go. No further discussion. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
You don't have to go May.
The motion passes 4-1. Very good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We all-time record, we are only 1 minute behind. No,
I've got a big CPAC updates also.
yeah, it's 8:36 and the agenda posts 8:35 for interested citizens. So this is the second opportunity and the first time ever that we've been on track for meeting this on time. So if there,
I think when you were away one meeting.
Doesn't say.
Right, Brad?
So if we have anybody in the room that wishes to speak before the school committee, move to the podium, or if we have anyone on Zoom, if you'd raise your hand. Seeing no one, hearing from no one, we'll close the opportunity for interested citizens. We're now ahead of schedule. We'll move on to subcommittee reports. So the first up is PMBC. Stacy?
Pretty much just the high school roof. We're still getting the contract finalized for that to start in the spring. Kids are out of school, but other than that.
Okay. Next up is budget subcommittee. Budget subcommittee wishes to bring to everyone's attention that our next meeting, which is what, the 16th, March 16th, is the public budget hearing. So the budget subcommittee will have a likely call a meeting next week. We'll need to post, we might need to post for that meeting.
Sorry.
Oh, perfect. I mean, for a budget subcommittee meeting.
Sorry for that. Public
So
hearing
in the
request.
event that the budget subcommittee wishes to meet Tuesday or Wednesday, we would need to post tomorrow. And then the budget will be presented to the school committee next Thursday, a week from today. And there's obviously a lot of work to be done in balance of the school year and future school years to pay for everything we just found. Anything else, Steve, on that budget subcommittee?
No, I think that's it for now. We just need to finalize a presentation.
Policy subcommittee?
We'll have a meeting next week that we're currently scheduling, and we will have a whole host of things from the Mass Association. And also we'll start taking a harder look at policy JHA, I believe it is, the religious holiday policy to bring to us later on.
That's correct. Thank you. And it was mentioned, you reminded me of something. The user fees for the busing and the athletics. It came into conversation, but maybe just to revert back to budget subcommittee. So the school committee obviously will have to address at a future meeting, maybe a couple meetings from now, the user fees for busing and for athletics so that we can plug that into the formula, just for the record. CPAC?
Yeah, got a lot. Had a really successful workshop about reading for all, with 25 parents turning out. We're fantastic to see that many. Had a parent meetup and CPAC meeting. It was great to see and meet new faces. Upcoming, got a lot of things. Got a parent meetup night out at Tavern in the Square on the 14th. We have parent-student bowling on April 6th in Lowell. Information on Facebook. There's a CPAC meeting on April 11th, where the elections will be, and the elections for CPAC will be in June. There's a Teachers Appreciation Day on April 12th. I want to congratulate the Unified Bowling Team, which qualified for the state championship. And the Unified Track and Field Team, again, thanks to Athletic Director Lynn for helping get that going. We're excited about it. They can contact, if anybody wants to do that, can contact Tracy Turner. And then we have Facebook pages, Littleton Mass CPAC for general information. There's a private group, a care group, LPS and SPED group chat, where if you need information about how to get on that, you can contact the liaisons. And we can get you in touch or contact me. Perfect.
That rounds out all of our subcommittee reports. We do have a need for executive session this evening. There's special language for that. So if there's no other business before the school committee, I'll make the motion so we get it correct. No one objects. So I move that the school committee go into executive session for the purposes of contract discussions with no intent to return to open session. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned and we will move to executive session once we have an opportunity to clear the room. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
y'all.
everyone.